Love espresso, drip coffee, and cold brew? With the Ninja Luxe Cafe, if you can crave it, you can brew it. Espresso, balanced. Drip coffee, rich. Cold brew, in a flash. With Barista Assist technology, you brew with no stress and no guesswork. And make perfect silky microfoam hands-free from dairy or plant-based milks. Bring the coffeehouse home and unlock your favorites with the Ninja Luxe Cafe.
Thanks for selling your car to Carvana. Here's your check.
Whoa, when did I get here?
What do you mean?
I swear it was just moments ago that I accepted a great offer from Carvana online. I must have time traveled to the future.
It was just moments ago. We do same-day pickup. Here's your check for that great offer.
It is the future.
It's the present and just the convenience of Carvana. Sorry to blow your mind.
It's all good. Happens all the time.
Sell your car the convenient way to
Carvana.
Pickup times may vary and fees may apply.
Welcome in for our next episode of the Dynasty Gambit. We are here with a very fun episode tonight, Austin, and that is going to be talking college football and Devy with some special guests. Hello, welcome into the next episode of the Dynasty Gambit, where we are talking the Devy Gambit. My name is Ben McCowan, and I'm joined here by some fellow buddies of mine, my co-hosts Austin, Dustin, and Chris tonight. Dustin and Chris, you guys are coming here from the Devy Dojo. Give us a little bit of an intro on your show, as well as what you guys are doing.
Yeah, man. So the Devy Dojo, like I try to tell everybody, we focus primarily on college, really, right? The Devy aspect of fantasy football, but really it's just scouting these prospects ahead of time. Like that was, for me, was always my favorite part of Dynasty. And it's why I enjoy this so much, because it's just like really getting that heads up play. So if you're into college, if you're into Devy, or if you're just interested in looking at the next line of prospects down the road, then our show is perfect for you.
Yeah, we certainly have some episodes where we talk about, trusting your training and some of the guys that are already in the NFL who maybe haven't had a lot of time to showcase their talents and kind of what to expect when they get a chance. But primarily the focus of the Devy Dojo is to discuss players currently in college who are going to make it to the NFL or may make it to the NFL and what we think about them. So it's a nice way to get a little extra fantasy spin on watching your college football games this season.
Absolutely, guys. And we wanted to bring you on because, our show is focused on game theory when we're talking in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And that does not exclude Devy Fantasy Football, which also then we're going to talk about some other things, including CFF and C2C as well. But it's been an exciting offseason, guys, because we've met you and kind of gone through this whole transformation of then starting to get into Devy leagues. And it has been a really fun time just getting into the prospects and starting to get our feet wet a little bit into college prospecting. I know Dustin, Chris, that's your guys' favorite thing.
Absolutely. Who doesn't love to know ahead of time? You could say, this was my guy. I've had him on my rosters for years, since he was 17 or 18 years old, and now he's in the NFL. And you're the one who said, I've been on this guy way longer than you. Before some schmuck on Twitter told you this is the guy to draft it with your first round draft pick this year, you already knew. So that's what we're all about. Yeah.
Last thing before we get into the weeds of things, it was funny because I texted Dustin the other night. I was watching, I think it was the high school game with Diabell. And I texted him. I was like, dude, my wife is watching me watch this game, and I feel just like a creep. And it just like looking over my shoulder. And Dustin, you told me, you're like, yeah, my wife won't, your wife won't even let you. She's like wants to stay out of the basement when you turn it on.
Yeah, because high school, it's a little different. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, hey, look, this is technically for work now. Yeah, I know they're in high school. It's Friday Night Lights, baby. Like it's fine. These are eventually guys that are going to make it to the NFL. I'm just, I'm scouting them right now. I'm getting ready to write a profile on their weaknesses and their their strengths. And she wasn't really buying it, but
every time I'm on my phone now, I just say it's work. I'm working. It's an easy excuse.
Right.
Doing 4 startups right now. It's work.
It's all about work.
And you're not lying.
All right, guys. So
when I first go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Austin. No, you're good.
I was saying when I first started, the first thing that really introduced me to Devy content in general was just kind of trying to get ahead of the next year's prospects. So I watched a lot of Devy videos, even not really knowing what Devy was, just to get a hold of it. Okay, so what are these picks? What are these picks 2 years from now going to be worth? Who's going to be in that running there? Can I plan ahead of, like, if I'm trying to rebuild, can I sell all my running backs because I'll know I'll be able to get a couple really good ones in a couple of years? So stuff like that. I think that Devy content, even if you don't even want to play Devy fantasy football, can be really good for just helping you understand like what's the upcoming draft classes. And then also if you're someone like me that just loves college football.
Lowe's knows you've got a job to do, and we help get it done. With the MyLowe's Pro Rewards program, eligible members save more with volume discounts on qualifying orders through a quote of $2,000 or more. Join for free today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer can't be combined with any other discount, contract, and/or special pricing. Exclusions, more terms, and restrictions apply. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Thanks for selling your car to Carvana. Here's your check.
Whoa, when did I get here?
What do you mean?
I swear it was just moments ago that I accepted a great offer from Carvana online. I must have time traveled to the future.
It was just moments ago. We do same-day pickup. Here's your check for that great offer.
It is the future.
It's the present and just the convenience of Carvana. Sorry to blow your mind.
It's all good. Happens all the time.
Sell your car the convenient way to
Carvana.
Pickup times may vary and fees may apply.
It gives you a better feel for the talent that's out there on other teams, and you learn more about those other teams. So yeah, I think Devy's great. It's also really fun. I've started to play, but yeah, I think it's for more than just people that want to play that super niche game. There's any fantasy football that you enjoy. It gives you a jump up on everyone else. You get to know about people ahead of time. So yeah, I think I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah. I mean, we all have seen it, right? As soon as the draft's over in April, somebody puts out a way too early next year's mock draft. Boy, Dev has been grinding those, and lots of other content creators try to do those in the summertime when it's a little bit more of a dead spot. That only scratches the surface, right? It's usually one round, there's players or whatever. And if you start to really dive into some Devy content, you can start thinking about guys that are coming out possibly next year, possibly 2027. Yeah. And now that's why like KTC has 2027 picks higher than 2026 because that loaded. Yeah, so you get a little bit of an edge up on your game. You can start manipulating your dynasty trades a little bit better to aim for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to
it's gotten super
super big with that for sure.
This is how you know it's super degen now is that we have 2028. Which way too early mock drafts that are out there. I've seen them. 2028.
Yeah, I just got invited to one. I was gonna mention that, but yeah, I just completed a 2027 only mock. We're running a 2026 mock in the Discord right now in Empire of the Elite, and then I got invited to a 2028 only. So I mean, that's for the super degens, man. I mean, that's the current crop of freshmen right now. We haven't even seen them play in an actual game. Yeah, right.
Davion Hyder.
Yeah, so I mean, fun stuff though. I mean, it always keeps you ahead of your league mates, truly. Like it really does, for better or for worse. I would say my advice to new Devy players is be careful of the bias that you can attach to certain prospects because it is easy. I mean, for both ways, positive and negatively too. There could be a prospect that you were big on and all the signs are telling you he's not going to make it in the NFL, but that's your guy and you just stick it out to the end. And likewise, on the opposite end, they could be a guy that you were out on and, like a Deontay Thornton. That's a guy that, I was out on from Devy, but now he's starting to really show some juice in the NFL. And I got to adjust my priors and that bias that I held and say, okay, look, he's getting a new opportunity. He's presenting us with new information. Now I have to take that and adjust my evaluation of them.
Yeah.
No, that's all good advice for sure. And that's, I mean, I guess that part of this episode is to really show some of the newbies that are watching this show that you can get into it, and it's honestly not rocket science. It's something that's just fun to put work into and really put the time into finding these prospects and enjoy just like being, like Chris was kind of saying early on it, right? Like you knew that, Genty, you could get Genty late in, like, let's say C2C formats. I've had some friends who have said they've gotten him in like late in supplemental drafts, and then he was a 101, right? So I think having that like bragging right of saying I had that prospect early on is really the fun part of Devy, and also the other fun part of the other formats as well. But guys, I wanted to open it up with the first question, really focusing on week 1, right? We've got that big, shiny, like first week of football coming up where we get a huge slate of games. And this week 1, at least for somebody who has been mostly a casual college football fan, like huge Michigan fan, but for the most part, like I'm starting to really break into it more and more. This week is going to be loaded, especially at the front end and the back end. But do you guys want to talk about kind of what games you're excited about, as well as what prospects you are really going to be tuning into this weekend?
Okay. Yeah, Chris, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good jump off because tomorrow night we're going to record our next episode of the Dojo, and we're going to do a full breakdown of week 1, some of the top games on the board. We're going to dive into the Devy relevant players in those games, and there are a lot of nice games to kick off our season here. The big one right off the bat is going to be number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. We're going to get Arch Manning in his debut as the full-time starter for Texas, the long-awaited debut now that Quinn Ewers is out of the way. Really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a fun game. The Ohio State team, of course, has the best offensive player in college football in Jeremiah Smith. They also have the best defensive player in college football in Caleb Downs. So the big question mark for me is what's going to happen with Julian Sayin. Is he going to have the mettle to step in there and play against a really, really good number 1 ranked team and get the win at home, or are they going to fall flat on the first game of the season in front of the home crowd? So I think this will be an exciting game, but the game that I am most excited for is number 9 LSU at number 4 Clemson, because we've talked about this on the Dojo. 2 of our favorite Heisman candidates will be facing off against each other in Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier, the Gumbo Gunslinger. So I'm really looking forward to that game. I think it should be fun. We'll see what Brian Kelly has cooked up to go into Death Valley and, get a good win on the road if he can. I heard that he had put Clemson logos on the weights and the pads and the bags and all the things that they were doing in practice to try to really amp up his team to say, this is our target this week. This is what we're doing. So I'm excited for LSU versus Clemson, but those aren't the only good games, right? There's other games on the schedule too, right, Dustin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right there in week 1, we're getting three matchups that involve the top 10 in the preseason AP poll. You talked about 2 of them. The next one that I'm looking forward to is Notre Dame. Notre Dame versus Miami. We're looking at it, and you have Miami, they're hoping that they struck gold 2 years in a row in the transfer portal. Of course, last year we know that they brought in Cam Ward. This year they brought in Carson Beck. Now there's a lot of questions surrounding Carson Beck. How is he going to look coming back from that injury? Is he going to be back at that 2023 form? And if he is, well, then the Canes might have a chance here. But I'm really looking at that Notre Dame offense, and from a Devy perspective, looking at a potential first-round running back there in Jeremiah Love. He's going to have the ability to put all of his talents on display there week 1. And so super excited. He does have a freshman, redshirt freshman quarterback in CJ Carr, which, I mean, Ben, we went down that emotional roller coaster together, man. We were in a Devy startup, and Dev was just, Ben was just making fun of me because he knew he took one of my guys. He was like, I got CJ Carr. And it was like, well, look at you. You might have egg on your face because he's not going to be the starter. It's actually going to be Kenny Minchie. But we made it. We're here. And
lo and behold, he takes the job for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crazy microcosm in college football with weekly news, that it's way different in the NFL, that we have way more information, But as you guys have shown, you get way less information with college, and you really have to deep dive and find the real answer with a lot of stuff in camp.
I will say
absolutely.
I have made 2 bets so far on week 1. The first one was a parlay with Texas winning the first half of the game and then Ohio State money line. The second one was Notre Dame against the spread, because for some reason Mario Cristobal has decided that he is going to be the first coach in FBS history to coach from the press box. Don't know why he's choosing to do that. That's asinine to me. I don't know why in the world you wouldn't want to be on the sidelines, but that's an easy fade for me. So Notre Dame all the way in that game. That's so weird.
I don't know if you guys remember this. A couple years ago, Hugh Freeze, when he was coaching at Liberty, he had to have some kind of surgery where he had to be laying in bed. So he was like laying in a hospital bed coaching from the press box. So when I hear coaching from the press box, that's the first thing I think of. But it is very rare and not by choice.
An odd thing to do, especially if you're not having
by choice.
Health issue or something. I don't know, very weird. And I know Miami also has been 0-9 against top 15 teams in the last 8 or 9 years. So it's not boding.
What did they
well
used
for them
to?
off the bat.
This rivalry in the 80s, they call it the Catholics versus the convicts, right?
Yes, they did.
Right.
I love that. I was going to bring that up too. Yeah. I want to make a shirt, Chris. Let's do that. Let's have a watch party for that one. You know, you could be with the Catholics and I'll be with the convicts. I mean,
There you go. Yeah.
right there we go.
I got I got a rosary bracelet that I wear every day. So.
There you
See,
go.
I used to work in DOC, so I'll be with the convicts.
Catholic, unless Notre Dame's playing my teams. Then
I'll be with the Catholics too, because I'm a Gator fan, so I hate Miami.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I'm not Catholic, but I don't want to join the other side, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I have Jeremiah Love, so on our the Devy
Yes, you
League,
do.
we're all in together, so extra motivation. Yeah.
There was one more
do-
game. Briefly before we move on. It's not getting a lot of steam right now, and it's a game. I believe it's
Florida
on
Long
Friday
Island.
night. No, I'm talking about Baylor versus Auburn. You talking about Coach Freeze reminded me of that.
Yeah.
You know, Baylor's no slouch, and I kind of have this sneaky feeling that they're going to pull out the win over Auburn. And with them starting 0-1, you know, Hugh Freeze is on that hot seat, and so I'm just curious to just kind of see how that goes along. Of course, from a Devy perspective, we're going to be watching running back for Baylor, Bryson Washington, one of Chris's guys, and then one of my guys, of course, everybody knows Cam Coleman for Auburn, wide receiver.
Yeah, of course,
He was the number 2 wide receiver in his recruiting class behind only Jeremiah Smith, a very talented wide receiver there. So
there's a couple like sneaky Devy relevant players on Baylor as well. Besides my boy Bryson Washington, I really like Michael Trigg, their tight end. I think, you know, we'll talk about this shortly here in a little bit, but tight end's not always a great asset for Devy, but he's one of the better ones, I think, in the nation that's kind of been underutilized. And Sawyer Robinson is also a pretty decent quarterback too. So I think he'll be fun, especially for, you know, C2C and CFF formats this year. Definitely looking forward to that game. I added it to our show sheet too for tomorrow.
nice.
And do you think Jackson Arnold will start the whole year for Auburn, or do you think Deuce Knight eventually takes over, or is that a next year thing?
I mean, if Deuce Knight is starting, it means Jackson Arnold did terrible, right? Like
Yeah,
that means that did not work.
They won in the red shirt. It would be my guess,
right.
but we'll see. I know that Dustin doesn't have the highest praise of Jackson Arnold, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I have my questions about Deuce Knight as well. So, I mean, we'll see. I think he definitely needs to redshirt and take that time to develop from the sidelines.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess the next thing. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the differences. I know there's different formats when you're talking about playing fantasy college football. So obviously Devy is the most popular, but you also got like C2C and CFF. So talk to us a little bit about the different formats, pros and cons, or compare them against each other, why certain people might be more interested in one over the other. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. So think of Devy like prospect scouting year round. I think you're making investments in players long term that you think are going to make it to the NFL and that are eventually going to make it to your dynasty rosters. I think of it as like the same concept of rookie picks in dynasty, only you attach a name to it. So the difference between that and a rookie pick is in Devy, your assets, they're not like this protected liquid asset where A dynasty rookie pick, right? It's going to maintain that value and only actually increase in value the closer that you get to the NFL draft. In Devy, though, it's a lot more volatile, and that asset can explode in value or it can tank pretty drastically in value. Like if one of my assets gets hurt, all of a sudden his value is tanked. So that's the difference from there. And in Devy, you're not tracking the points, whereas in C2C, you're tracking the collegiate points and you're still hoping to get like guys on your roster that can potentially make it to the NFL, but also you're trying to win on that side. Like you have a separate championship, you have a pot. So you want guys that will score you points. So in C2C and CFF, you'll see a lot of these G5 guys be on your starting rosters a lot more. Whereas in Devy, we're not really paying attention to those guys. We're looking at the guys that we think are going to get the high end capital. So there is that difference, and C2C can be intoxicating for us sickos. Like if you're a true degenerate and you want to balance that mix, because that's kind of what you're doing in Dynasty already, right? You're balancing that long-term asset protection down the road and scoring points and trying to win a championship. And it's like that in C2C, but just completely magnified. And it's crazy. Like my problem with C2C, not really the problem, is it's just we haven't had reporting standards quite up to par with the NFL, whereas like, hey, this guy apparently has been injured all week and I didn't know I have him in my lineup, and all of a sudden he's gone, he's out, he's not playing this game, or they're playing suddenly on a Friday and you didn't realize. Things like that have made it frustrating. But now as you see like the ACC and the Big 12, they're starting to actually release game day inactives, which is huge for these formats, so we can actually see who's active for these games. And then of course in CFF, think of it like NFL redraft. Right, it's you draft that team just for that year, and you're solely focused on scoring points and winning for that year. So again, you have G5 guys that make a big chunk of your roster because you just want those points. I don't care if they play for Tennessee State, right? Like as long as they're scoring me points consistently, that's going to work out. And so in that format, you can get quarterbacks very, very late because you could get some of these guys that are just on some of these smaller programs.
Including
what are some of the best?
Alhada.
Yes. My favorite G5 quarterback. I mean, did you see him out there playing on a bum ankle, hopping around? Did you see the after game celebration?
I did not. I watched most of the game and saw he was hurt and this guy was battling. I think we were messaging back and forth on the server on EOE and just like, should he be out there still? Why is he still out there? We were speculating some pretty bad stuff when we saw the injury happen because it looked really bad and he escaped a pretty severe injury to his knee or to his ankle. So that was an interesting game to watch. But what were you going to say, Dustin?
Oh, just that. Like he has youth on his side, right? We were thinking the worst already, but I mean he's a little 18-year-old out there running around. But after the game, they were playing some Waka Flocka Flame, right? It's a party. And he's in there just bouncing, just jumping around, having a good time. I just love that. That's what I love about college football, man. The energy from these guys, the pageantry, the rivalries, the bands, all of that. It's why we love the game. And it was just really cool to see that.
When you guys talk about playing either of these formats where you actually set a lineup for college football, what are some of the best sites or apps that you use to do that?
I would definitely advocate for best ball format for CFF, so
yes.
You don't have to set your lineups all week round as there's different games popping in and out. So that's just one thing. If you're playing CFF, you're thinking about playing CFF, make it best ball, man, so you don't have to worry about setting all those lineups all the time. I know Dustin has a website, CFB Depth. Is that what it is?
Yes.
It'll give you the depth charts of all of the college football teams, which is really nice.
Yeah,
it's a good
as best as they can. Like they do the best out there in updating in real time these depth charts. But I mean, that's a need within the space. I tell people all the time, it's the wild, wild west out here. There's not a lot of services. So a lot of the research that you're doing, it, at least for me, like I'm doing on my own time, just, plugging into Google, trying to figure out some of this stuff. And so it really is it's a lot more difficult than in the NFL. I don't have an app with everything in one place that I could just collectively look at. So, I mean, that is part of the challenge, but it's also part of the fun.
Yeah, we just had a call.
You're talking about 300 teams instead of 30.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, we had a call with our friends from League Champ recently to talk about how can we make that app more Devy friendly. And I think that the natural expansion of that, once that happens, is going to be to open it up a little bit more for other formats as well. So there's not a ton of resources out there. I mean, a lot of things are paywalled. The best options are, the same things that you're doing for Dynasty. I like to just search people's names on Twitter and see what other people are saying, see what the local beat writers are talking about. That's how I did a lot of my research for, the fall camp news, was just looking at different teams and fall camp and, what are the guys that are there all the time saying. The guys that have been reporting on the team for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, they always have a vibe that's better than anybody else is going to get you, because they're boots on the ground. They're in Nebraska, they're in Kansas, they're in wherever, and they have a better idea of what the team's going to shape up to look like. So don't let the analytics and all the fancy nuance of the modern era get in the way of just going back to a good classic beat reporter.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing for you guys, I know that in the EOE server, you've been running the mocks. You've been trying to form some form of ADP, because Dustin, Chris, you guys have said it before, but like there is no true ADP in Devy football. It's a little bit more murky than in the NFL.
Yeah, it seems to be in circles too. Like I said, there's a lot of paywalls, and we're in a couple different crews. Like Devy Royale has been very friendly to us. We communicate with some of the guys from the C2C group. It seems like depending on the circles that you're running in, there's going to be a little bit of a different ADP, because some people are going to promote other guys and have lower grades on certain players and things like that. So it's hard to find more of a consensus that way, but it is nice, because we've been trying to run some different mocks with, getting other people involved that are outside of our circles, just to see exactly what the nuance is there and where different players go. And as the summer has progressed, some guys have gone up, some guys have gone down, and just ultimately where is that going to land? And of course, it's going to change all the time throughout the season, especially. But it's a good way, get in a mock, join the EOE Discord. You can jump in mocks with us. You can see our past mocks, see what the ADPs are looking like, and figure out, what players might be an edge.
Yeah, I have nothing really to add to that. Just that's why we've worked so hard to get other people in these mocks, man. It's just, let's get as much data as we can. And that's truly our goal, is just to eventually create like a central hub where everybody can come to it. And that's how we build this ADP, because it is the wild, wild west out there, man. It can be frustrating too from like a content creation standpoint, because we have no consensus really to stand on. I mean, outside of the top guys, it's really a crapshoot. So
that's what makes it fun, though. I mean, it's draft season for redraft right now, and everybody's telling you, screw ADPs, just go with your gut, go with your guys. There's no reason that so it's always about if you're drafted on sleeper, figure out the ADPs, figure out who you like that's a little bit lower on the ADP. Same with the ESPN. You should know your format going in, know your platform going in, so that you can try to beat those ADPs and get your guys when you need to. It's the same with Devy. It's just more pronounced. You have to be able to stand on your convictions and say, I really like this guy, I'm going for this guy. So I've been lucky, because Drew Aller seems to fall in everybody's mocks and startups and everything. So I've been getting Drew Aller in the second, sometimes third round. And I love it.
It always comes back to Drew Aller. Yeah. It always comes back to Drew Aller. I don't know how we get here, Chris.
It always does.
Nobody asked about Drew. Okay.
Well, it's just an example, you want to get your guys. So just go after the guys that you believe in. Carnell Tate's another one. He's from my rival, and I've been promoting him all summer long because I really like him. I think he's going to have a good place in the NFL. So it's more about just sticking to your gut. And if you've done the work, and creators that you like, such as hopefully the dojo has done some work for you, follow your heart.
Yeah, I do have to say, like the mocks are great for that. It definitely helps, any newbies kind of get an idea of where do these players fall in either separate drafts or honestly, I think the next topic that we wanted to bring up was, what does a Devy startup look like, right? We're talking whether it's something like a combined versus a separate startup, where combined, definitely just wanted to get your guys' thoughts and how you view those differently.
Okay, so essentially just the difference between the two then.
Yeah.
I like this question. I think it's great for new players to understand, because there is a big difference between the two, right? For new players, I typically recommend to start with a separate draft, which I believe both of you were a part of one of those where I think there was somebody in the group that wanted to do a combine, and I said, hey, there's a lot of new people here. Let's separate it. We'd simply put a separate one as like, you typically do what you would do in a normal dynasty startup, right? You're going to start there, you're going to draft your dynasty guys, and then after that, you're going to have a completely different draft where you're drafting only Devy players, only players that are still in college. But what makes a combined format such a beast and so much fun for us degenerates is just what it sounds like. It's a combined draft with NFL prospects, right? Your college prospects, and if your league allows it, even some high school guys, some seniors. So, I mean, it's just a real cluster and it's so much fun. But the hard part is determining and weighing the value, right? Do I want to take an Evan Ingram in the 7th or 8th round, or do I look at Ryan Wingo from Texas? That was a real decision that I faced in one of my mocks. And I said, look, I need a tight end. I could take this value. I could take the points right here on this side, or I can look at a guy that I think is a potential number 1 for Arch Manning. I think, back in his prospect when he was a recruit coming out of high school, he was like the 3rd or 4th guy, or 3rd or 4th wide receiver in that class. So projecting that forward, I think he has a high chance to be a first-round pick. I ended up going with Ryan Wingo. I also didn't have any Devy assets yet in that draft, so I wanted to make sure that I had an asset there in 2027. And I truly just looked at that as a 2027 first. So in my head, I compared it, okay, would I rather take a 2027 first or Evan Ingram? And I'm a Broncos fan. I think Evan Ingram is going to be great this year, but give me that 2027 first all day long. So that's kind of how I weighed it. And those are little micro decisions that you have to make throughout the entire process. And I believe, Austin, you were in a combined draft with us. It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is. I had a blast, and I liked in that league that we did. It's unlimited. You could draft as many Devy guys as you wanted. So I think I drafted like 15. Throughout the draft. It was
busted. I think drafted like 24 or 25.
Yeah. I don't recommend doing that. And I told everybody that this is not my typical strategy. I just never do it. And so I wanted to do it. I was like, let me just try this for once. So it was a lot of fun.
Importantly, you want to have fun. Absolutely. That's the goal. I think a lot of our listeners have done a dynasty startup, right? With not Devy, just straight dynasty. And you kind of go in and you have to have an idea of what you're looking for. And if not right off the bat, by like the first 2 or 3 picks you make and you've seen how the board is going, you're starting to make those decisions. Am I going for vets or am I going for long-term, dynasty youth production, yada, yada. It's exactly like that in a Devy combined startup. You have to decide pretty early on what's going to be my plan here. Do I want to put the chips in and try to win year 1, or do I want to assemble the best possible team with tons of Devy assets and tons of young NFL assets? So you have to be able to pivot during the draft, but you want to have an idea so that by rounds 4, 5, 6, you have a better goal in mind of what you're actually looking to do. Because the last thing you want to, you're going to be getting trade offers from people that want to trade up and get your pick. You don't want to be in a position where you're like, I thought I was going to go all in, but now I have, Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry, and I don't feel like the rest of my team is ready to compete. So then you pivot. You don't want to be in that position. You want to be at a point where you're like, I'm just going all in on youth, all in on Devy, or vice versa. And again, that's not necessarily the best strategy, but it is a fun one, and it's a good way to play the game. Well, I think if you're just starting out in Devy, you want to get a very light league with maybe like 5 rounds of Devy on a separate draft, where you do your startup and then you do a Devy draft, and you can just focus on, let me have my own strategy, tried and true from the Devy side or the dynasty side. And then I'll just be able to pick up 5 prospects that I like on the Devy side. So if you're really starting out and you want to get into the Devy format, that's a good way to approach it early on. And then probably by like the 2nd or 3rd month of you being in that league, you're like, I'm just going to go on and do a combined Devy startup.
It's happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I think that's exactly what happened with you guys. We looped you in with Devy. We're like, hey, it's just 5 rounds, try it. And then we're like, hey, come in this combined draft. We're drafting high schoolers in like the 20th round. Tristan Keys was, I think, a guy I took in there, or I might have taken Mark Bowman too. I don't know. I drafted a couple.
I took Dia Bell and Jared Curtis. So,
I got Tristan.
I'm right there with you.
There you go. There you go. That's a good pick.
Tyrone Bigham scratching the itch.
Yeah. For those of you guys who don't know, Tristan Keys is potentially the wide receiver one in next year's recruiting class, and he's early committed to LSU. Plays a lot like Malik Neighbors. He has a similar frame, wins with quickness on his route stem, and then he just has incredible bounce. That's where I compare him to Neighbors. It's just the bounce in the air, the ability to go get it, and he just looks so fluid. And I love that he's going to LSU, but there's some rumors swirling. There's some whispers being brought out there that he might go to Tennessee, which I would hate that. So
it would not be as good for his long-term outcome, I think. As fun as Tennessee is to watch, LSU is.
I think you did get Tristan Keys. Now looking back, I didn't have him now.
It was either him or Chris Henry Jr.
I've played fantasy football for about 20 years, but I also have a longer history of playing dynasty hockey and dynasty baseball, even more so than Devy. So to kind of just zoom everything out, I think a lot of dynasty hockey and dynasty baseball leagues, especially the ones that I've played in, you're drafting prospects. So a lot of times you're taking, guys that, Paul Skeens or whatever, those aren't going to come very often. You're going to be getting like the round 2 first baseman from the Rays or whatever. And then he's going to be on your farm team for 3 years or whatever. And you're going to wait. That's a lot of what Devy is like when you really get deep into the weeds. So that's why we say it's best to start a little smaller, where if you only got 5 rounds, that's 25 players, or not 25 players, but 5 rounds of 60 players, whatever, in your league size, and you're not getting too deep. You can focus on the Power 4 conferences and be a little bit more like maybe closer to the NFL, a little bit more career trajectory, and even then it's a little shaky still. So you don't have to go full insano mode on it, baseball mode, hockey mode, all that.
Yeah, just like you said, man, it's so much fun to go heavy in the Devy side, and then you look around and most of your Devy assets never even made it to the NFL. Hell, they never even made it to the second year in college. My guy Malachi Nelson was a guy that I invested super heavily in. I don't even want to look back at some of the trades that I made to go get him, because of course he was recruited to USC. I saw him there with my guy Lincoln Riley, and I said, hey, he's the next one. And then he's just now barely getting ready to start his first game as a senior for the UTEP Miners. So, I mean, very volatile. That's why we always say invest in the dynasty side, right? Get those NFL assets that you already know have made it, that are going to produce, and they're still going to have that value. But of course, you do want to supplement that with those Devy guys, because that's your pipeline right there. So you want to make sure that you have those assets right there ready to contribute.
Absolutely. And piggybacking off of like the previous question about how you do drafts combined versus separate, how do you guys keep track of things, right? Do you use spreadsheets? Do you use placeholders? Is there a preference? And how does that fall together?
Well, 100% of the time you should have a spreadsheet, and major shout out to our boy Josh, who has created awesome spreadsheets for us to keep track of things for our Devy leagues. You always want to have a paper elsewhere that says who's on your Devy teams so that you can come back to that. I do like, though, the leagues where we're in leagues where either kickers are your placeholders for your Devy assets or IDP guys. We're doing a fun league with the Devy Planet where the IDP guys, like if they're a linebacker, then that translates to a running back. If they're a defensive back, that translates to a wide receiver. It makes it a little bit easier to just look at somebody's roster on Sleeper and say, oh, okay. And then you can look at their nickname or their commissioner's note or whatever that says their true Devy player name. So it's easier to make trades that way. Because just like today, I made a trade in a league where I traded Brian Robinson for nothing. And it wasn't for nothing. It was Brian Robinson for Eugene Wilson III. But you have to go into the spreadsheet and move it around, right? So it just looks kind of suspect when you're like, why is he just giving away a player, right? So it's kind of nice to have the actual player on Sleeper or wherever you're playing to know that there's something actual of value being traded at first glance.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have done a good job with setting up the spreadsheets, and that's definitely a great way to do it. Josh has the graphics and everything that he includes for each of the players. So it's a great time when you got that spreadsheet going.
Yeah. So just to kind of jump into that, I think this is a good transition here because you talked about your trade that you just did, Brian Robinson for Eugene Wilson. So when you're kind of looking at doing trades, you're in a combined league, Devy league, where you have a bunch of guys, bunch of college players, and then obviously your full roster of normal NFL players. How are you comparing values? How are you deciding that it's worth it to trade Brian Robinson for Eugene Wilson? Like, what's the kind of the process for comparing values between guys in the NFL and guys in college?
Well, for me, it's always going to depend on if I'm contending or if I'm rebuilding. So much like how I'd approach it in a dynasty sense, that's exactly what I'm doing here. If I'm contending, I want to consolidate as many of my Devy assets that I have for true contending pieces. And on the flip side, if I'm not, I'll seek a bigger asset in a trade, maybe like a tear down scenario, and I'll look for nice little Devy assets as like a throw-in piece. So as you can imagine, that opens up a lot of avenues. Being able to use NFL players, you can use those draft picks, college assets and trades, sometimes those high school guys if you still have them. So it can be like a difficult process because I think people already struggle to kind of have a consensus value of players in Dynasty. And that's just amplified by throwing in so many other pieces. So that part of like valuing, it's going to be dependent on how you value players. And it takes a lot of negotiating with the other your trade partner there and how they value those guys and what they're looking for. Because there might be a Devy asset on their squad that they're not really that interested in. But, I'm looking at them and I'm going, hey, that's a guy that I really believe in. I can move. I'm trying to think of a recent deal I just did. None's coming to mind, but I did see AJ Brown was tiered down for a Romo Dunze. And then it looks like they got right here, Jaden Baugh. I don't think whoever had Jaden Baugh, they didn't know what that looked like. They got that, and I think a second round pick or something thrown in there. There was some sort of pick thrown in there. So that was a recent example of one that I saw. It's really dependent because somebody could look at that and say, no, I want all these other pieces. I believe in them. And the other one's like, hey, just give me AJ Brown. I want the contending piece now. I don't care about 3 years down the road when we're in 2028 and what my team looks like. Give me the stud right now. And yeah, so that's how I approach it. Typically, that's what you're going to see me doing when I'm making trades is, look, I'll give up these assets and then obviously get that big piece.
Yeah, I would look at it more as a throw-in for a lot of Devy guys, especially if you're in a deeper league. There's a lot of trades where, if you're in a dynasty league, you're trying to get enough value for a player. So maybe you're trading a guy for a package, like you're saying, you're down tiering wide receiver to get a current NFL player and then a couple picks thrown in or whatever to kind of even out the value. It's a good way to even out value because when you're not talking about the absolute top tier Devy assets, a lot of these are crapshoots, and we're going to see in 3 months from now, a lot of the values have changed on a lot of these Devy players. So you want to make sure that you're making the right moves for yourself where you're not underselling an asset. I had a friend reach out recently about trading Justin Jefferson for 3 Devy prospects that were all basically first round Devy startup players. But I was like, man, there's no way I would ever do that. Even if maybe Jeremiah Smith, but it's very rare that we have a player of his caliber that's almost a sure thing guarantee in college that's going to make a giant impact at the NFL. So if you're not trading for a guy like that and you're just kind of taking a crapshoot, especially in the summer before the season's even started, you do not want to trade an elite asset like a Jefferson or even like a Puka Nacua or something like that. Don't make it all Devy based because the value could just evaporate like that.
Yes.
And you're stuck and now you've completely lost. And if your goal was to rebuild, you're rebuilding from nothing now instead of having actual assets there. So I would always advocate for, at the very least, getting some sort of either current NFL player or, first round pick where it's going to have some sort of value over jumping straight into, entirely Devy assets because it is such a flickering flame.
Ooh.
So going back to the, talking about some of the top tier Devy assets, right? I think there's been some conversation about people taking Jeremiah Smith roughly in the same range in a combined startup as Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb. And it's like, where do you guys sit with that? Because, I see the potential of him being a long time NFL stud, but at the same time, you're putting in a lot. And I think you guys can probably speak more to it, but like putting a lot of risk into that.
Yeah, it's very risky. I don't care if your name is Jeremiah Smith. We all expect him to hit. I don't anticipate him ever being a bust in the NFL. However, it's still within the range of outcomes. We don't know what his future holds. Unfortunately, and I don't mean to put this on him, but injuries could happen. There's a lot of things that can happen. He could go to a bad situation in the NFL. I'm so jaded, Ben. I've seen this play out too many times. Sammy Watkins was absolutely one of the best wide receivers I ever saw. And I mean, he still had a decent NFL career, but definitely never within the range that we projected him as a collegiate prospect. Marvin Harrison, I think he's going to be fine. He did great, but you saw what happens when that production isn't relative to that hype and those expectations. Jeremiah Smith is on a whole nother level. We saw him in that combined draft go, 102? Right after Josh Allen. So when Josh Allen, Jeremiah Smith.
I would not advocate for that, but I understand why SC did it. That's our boy from Devy Planet. He just wanted to do it. He's like, I'm coming out of this no matter what with Jeremiah Smith. And he happened to get the 102. So that's what he did. Not something I would ever advocate for, but if it's getting into the back half of the second round and you're like, this is a place where, I just want to go get my guys. Like I talked about earlier, man, stand on your convictions. There's no reason that you can't do that, but you also have to have the idea in mind that with your first round pick, you're taking somebody who's going to carry a lot more value for future years and not just, be a complete waste of a first round pick. And then at that point you have to pivot because you're not competing year one, right? You can't expect to compete year one if you're wasting a pick, not even wasting, but you're using a pick on a guy who's not going to see the NFL for a couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we know SC just had to get his guy, but I've heard people doing that before. Like it's not that uncommon for people. They're just like, Jeremiah Smith is already a better prospect than Jamar Chase ever was, all these things that they're saying. And ultimately that could wind up to be true. I love Jeremiah Smith. I cannot advocate ever taking him that high. I did take him pretty high in that combined startup that we all did together. And I took him at 212 in the combined startup. So that was after like the Amon-Ra's, the Brian Thomas Jr.'s, the Puka Nakuas. After that, like that tier of wide receivers is when I'm very comfortable taking Jeremiah Smith. In fact, I'm working on my combined rankings right now. It's a very long and tedious process, but that's exactly where I have him slotted in. It is right there after that tier for combined.
If we look at an example too, like you're talking about a situation when they get to the NFL, look at Devontae Smith, right? He wasn't like a elite top flight Devy asset, but he was one that everybody had. He was an Alabama wide receiver. Everybody knew his name. He ended up winning the Heisman. And despite his small frame, he kind of beat the odds there, right? Makes it to the NFL for a great team, but that great team, he's already blocked by A.J. Brown, and they don't tend to throw as much as other teams. They're projected, I think, bottom 6 in passing offense coming into this season. So that's a situation where he's been able to overcome a lot of those odds to be a pretty consistent wide receiver 2 for fantasy purposes. But that also means that there's going to be weeks where Devontae Smith isn't giving you a ton of points. And he's always going to be second fiddle in his own offense that doesn't pass a ton. So there's a situation where you might have been thrilled to have him on your Devy roster a few years back, but now he's completely blocked in his own, situation there. And he's happy. He won a championship. He got paid. He's not going to be complaining, but you might be complaining right now if you were a Devy owner of Devontae Smith. So you always got to watch out for those ultimate pitfalls because we don't know what's going to happen.
No, it's so volatile.
So I guess the other question is, so you mentioned having kind of the first, picks and Devy assets. So when you have a bunch of Devy assets, what do rookie drafts look like? Because I'm assuming most of the time, when you have lots of Devy players on your team, the majority of people who would have been first and second round picks in rookie drafts are going to be already on rosters. So what do those rookie drafts look like? And then how do you end up valuing those picks differently than you do in Dynasty because the talent is a little bit watered down?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that is part of the process with that. Like I would tell people I value those picks slightly less, but they're still valuable because there's always going to be guys that didn't make your Devy roster. Like every year there's an example of somebody who makes it. Like Jaden Daniels was a guy that rose through the ranks and was not on a lot of Devy rosters, unless you were like on a super deep one, because he was projected to be a 3rd, 4th round pick until that final season, and then he projecting went forward. You could go back to Joe Burrow. Ashton Genty was another one. Ashton Genty wasn't on a lot of Devy rosters, more so on the C2C, Ben, because obviously you've been in those drafts are deep. They're pretty beast. But they still hold value because of that. And then of course, like if you are in a combined settings, you're combining the rookies, future prospects, anybody else in the Devy landscape who wasn't picked the year prior. So like this year, in actually a lot of leagues, I had Jeremiah Love as a supplemental pick that I took. Like I prioritized building my Devy roster because it was an orphan that I took over. And, this one actually was a separate one. So I took Tyler Warren in the rookie draft because I had the first pick, and I had the first pick in the Devy, and I took Jeremiah Love. And even though it was an expansive Devy roster, you can draft high schoolers and things of that nature. Jeremiah Love wasn't taken because he just wasn't on a lot of rosters. He didn't have a lot of burn the year prior running behind Audric Estime. Then he came back this next season, put on 20 pounds, and then he blew up. So now this season we're drafting the heck out of Jeremiah Love. And so that's just one example. There's always going to be Devy assets, NFL assets, and those things that rise to the top that we missed. No matter how deep it is, that's all I have to say is that there's always going to be somebody that we missed and they make it, and now you have a chance to take them. But obviously it doesn't hold nearly as much value because a lot of those top-end assets and prospects are already taken, to your point.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of picking up an orphan in a 10-team Devy league this year. So just to provide some real-life examples, the top players, like players that went in the first round of that draft, RJ Harvey, Cam Ward, Tyler Warren, Matthew Golden, Jaden Higgins. So you can see that a lot of the higher-end talent had already been taken off the board, as you might imagine, because they had already been on people's Devy rosters. So you want to be able to weigh it. I had the pleasure of being on a Dynasty panel at the Fantasy Football Expo, and somebody mentioned, picks are always going to be the currency of your league. So players are valued differently by every owner in the league, every manager in the league. They're going to have a specific idea on a certain player, and while there's a general consensus, they might be higher or lower on somebody, but picks are always the currency. And that remains to be the case in Devy leagues. However, you need to understand that a first round in a Devy league like that is going to be slightly less. You're going to get a slightly less player than you would in a normal Dynasty league because a lot of those top assets are already off the board. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind as you're making trades. Don't let somebody take advantage of you saying, oh, I'm giving you a first for this guy, when the firsts are a little bit lower on the perspective compared to a normal Dynasty league.
Yeah, like a mid to late first, typically, right, in your normal Dynasty leagues. That's how Kevin Coleman always taught it to me.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to phrase it.
Yeah.
And one thing, too, that we should mention there, obviously Tyler Warren was one of those names that I listed. We talk about it. We have talked about it. We'll talk about it forever. Tight ends are not great Devy assets. So even a guy like Tyler Warren, who was a pretty clear, he's going to have an impact in the NFL coming from a university that's put out a lot of NFL tight ends recently, he wasn't even owned in that. And it was a smaller league. It was year 2 of 5-round draft had been started up. So nobody drafted him because he's a tight end. So there's times that you're going to get lucky and there's going to be a Tyler Warren available, but we've talked about it before. We'll say it a million times. Tight ends are not great Devy assets unless you're in very deep leagues. So don't go burning high assets on a tight end to keep on your Devy roster.
Yeah, and at least for a lot of mine, like Colston Loveland was a tight end that was taken, but Tyler Warren was a guy that was able to slip through the cracks. I think because he didn't get a lot of playing time early in his career, so there wasn't those guys, like, oh, the early breakout, looking at this and this and this, these check marks that they hit. So he was a guy that slipped through the cracks. And I'm telling you, I have a roster where I got Jaden Daniels on my roster as a Devy asset. After that big season, man, it was so much fun to be like, man, I got the first pick and this big time name slipped through the cracks somehow. So that's always fun when that happens.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where we kind of had our questions on Devy, right? What are some things for you guys as far as game theory or anything else that would be top of mind that we didn't talk about at this point?
I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about quarterbacks. They're the hardest position for professional scouts to find, and I think it's magnified in Devy. It's so volatile, and it's hard to find those guys that are true difference makers even in the NFL. You look at a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who he was a Devy darling for a long time, like broke out as a freshman, put up great numbers, was winning championships, became the number 1 overall pick. But as you see, like he didn't always quite meet that steep price tag that you might have paid as a Devy asset. Like Trevor Lawrence is a good dynasty quarterback to have, right? He's solid, he's going to get you points, but he never quite met that expectation that we had for him as a Devy asset. And by the same token, you could invest pretty heavily. Like you can invest in the Lenore Sellers right now, projecting him to be a big time Konami code quarterback, and then he makes it in the NFL and he just falls flat on his face. It happens all the time. There's only 32 of these jobs, and there's probably only like 5 truly elite quarterbacks in the NFL. So putting a lot of stock and investment in the quarterback position when they are Devy assets is always very, very risky. And I
Bryce
think
Underwood's okay though, right?
Oh man, who's going to tell him? I'm just kidding. Yeah,
right.
He's all right. Yeah, he's okay.
Quarterback.
Yeah.
He's want to go to Michigan because they don't develop quarterbacks. I do love Bryce though. I'm just Josh with you. I would say too, you got to keep in mind that even in a standard dynasty league, there's only 12 players that are going to go in round 1, right? So we can get as hyped as we want about all of these guys that are playing in college right now, but only 12 of them are going to be in the top 12 ADP for dynasty rookie drafts. So even when we're talking about, I get hype about Bryson Washington or Mekhi Hughes. I'm very excited about him transferring to Oregon. These are all guys that even if I'm thrilled to have them on my Devy roster, a realistic outcome for them is a day 2 draft position, as a running back in the NFL, which likely means that they're going to be at best back end of the first round or somewhere in round 2, if you're lucky. So a lot of these guys that have ended up becoming, round 3, round 4 picks, Woody Marks, Rocket Sanders, I think he just got cut today. These are guys that were once, decent Devy guys to own and are still kind of fringe players for rookie draft. So it's just something to keep in mind as the overall perspective of what you really have there. So if you're pushing all your chips in and you're really making a push for that title, do it. That's what we play the game for, right? We want to win. So don't be afraid to sell your Devy guys to get true productive talent.
Just to piggyback off that a little bit, Chris, before we leave, I think that's why you saw in the first episode that we did of the Devy Dojo, we talked about when you want to build these Devy rosters, you want to build around the wide receiver position. And I truly take that same approach into Dynasty because they're ones that I know are going to be able to maintain that value. It's the same in the NFL side that you see in the Dynasty side. A lot of times what you see in Dynasty is always a reflection of what's happening in the NFL pipeline. We know that teams are going to value these wide receivers at a higher rate than these running backs. It's a shocker if you get 2 running backs in the first. You get a lot more wide receivers making it to the first round. Obviously, they're going to maintain that value. Even after an injury, you're going to see that wide receivers are able to hold that value. So they're just the more stable asset on both ends. So when I'm building any type of roster, I want to truly build around the wide receiver position. Because like Chris said, you can have the best running back that you love. Ollie Gordon was a Doak Walker Award winner with like 1,600 rushing yards. And he was a 6th round draft pick after one bad year. Right? Like the volatility of these other positions as Devy assets is truly enough for me to shy away and be a little more hesitant and want to build around those wide receivers. That's why in that combined startup, you saw the wide receivers are like, how did I build my team? I went Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman. I think I got another 2026 wide receiver in there somewhere too. I want to build around those guys. I don't think I got Tyson, but yeah, probably Carnell Tate. Who's another great wide receiver. I mean, he's an Ohio State wide receiver. He's going to go to the NFL and he's going to have a role. Take the Ohio State wide receiver, as Chris always says. Don't overthink it.
Looks like Oz having some difficulties.
We might have lost him, but
that's all good. Yeah, I completely agree though. Episode 1 of Devy Dojo, we talked about that. We talked about all of our tiers. This is going to be a great episode for us to look back on. We talked a little bit about upcoming matchups, but I will totally refer people to this if they just want basic Devy strategy. I feel like we nailed it. We talked about a lot of our overall mindset on the Devy game, and I appreciate you guys having us on to your wonderful show.
Absolutely. And that is a good place to wrap. I think, Austin, did you have one more question before you would cut out there?
No, I was just, all I was trying to say, I don't know, I didn't have a great connection, but all I was saying was, yeah, good points. I was just kind of like echoing what Chris said. I thought it was good points. I didn't have anything to add.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, no, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. I mean, we covered really a lot, and obviously we have a lot of new, Devy potential players watching this video, especially from our server and getting into that. But I think this episode really gives them a place to jump off from. And what is good about this episode too is that they're getting connected with two individuals who are great in the game of Devy. And there are obviously other platforms we love. I listened to Back to Devy, and I've listened to Devy Royale as well with Kevin and Jay. But you guys being so close to us in the server, in Discord and in the group chat and everything, we can reach out to you guys, ask you about Devy things. But you have two great resources right here, and definitely look into the Devy Dojo if you are wanting to get into more of Devy and Devy game theory and how to really make that next jump and which players to target. But do you guys have any other things that you're working on or kind of things throughout the season that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, we're really trying to get this rolling, man. We want to host watch parties for all the big games. So week 1, we're looking at Ohio State versus Texas. We're going to be hosting a watch party in the free Empire of the Elite Discord. So like I said, it's free. You can find me on Twitter at Empire Elite FF. I have a link tree with the Discord link in there. So if you're interested in joining, just hop in there. Ben's in there. Austin's in there. Obviously, Chris is in there. We're chopping it up all the time. So that's a big thing for us. Going to be looking to roll out the Substack here, hopefully tomorrow, if life just ever slows down. But going to be pushing out a lot of more written content, which I am very excited about.
And what about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, please join us at the Empire of the Elite Discord. We love talking to people in there. That's our go-to place for all that. But you can find me at Chris the Cardman on Twitter. There's a chance I'll be hosting some live Q&As before every Saturday morning. Maybe not every Saturday, but it seems like some of these Saturdays I'm going to try to get out there and answer some questions prior to the games. And there may be other times that we do some pre-recorded discussions on the previews and things like that. So looking forward to just getting into the college football season and talking ball with everyone.
Awesome.
It's a great time, guys. And I have to say too, like Austin and I are going to be hosting some live games as well. And the good thing about that is, for the most part, NFL never really runs into it with college until later in the season. So, definitely look out for the watch parties through EOE with Dustin, Empire of the Elite, with Dustin and Chris. And then also live NFL games on our Discord as well. I'm hoping to get the Cowboys and Eagles going this next Thursday. So that's going to be a fun one. Chris, being an Eagles fan, I know you're excited about that one. But yeah, we'll leave your guys' social media in the description. We will, definitely feel free to reach out to any of us on Twitter, on Discord, and just, ways to connect with us. So it was great having you guys on, and you guys have a good night.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.